Everybody, this is the Harbinger Report, and I'm your host, John Bell. Welcome into the new year, and of course, we started off with a bang, right? Like literally, right? So that's the topic of tonight's show. The tonight's show is about terrorist attacks that took place in New Orleans. It wasn't the only place where there was a terrorist attack that took place within last night and today. But we'll cover into that. But before we get into the nitty gritty, I got some something fun to show you. All right, before we get into it, a subscriber sent me this yesterday, and it was fantastic. So I wanted to show you guys. And since the favorite topic on this show is Dogman and cryptids, I wanted to show this to you. By the way, for people that request more content for that, I would do that content all day long. The problem is it is hard to find credible sources of that content. And there's so many shows now today that they gobble them up, you know, like sharks eating guppies in the water. So if you know anybody who has had an encounter, please put them in touch with me. You can contact me at the HarbingerReport at yahoo.com. All right. Put them in touch with me. If you know anyone that's had encounters, I don't care if they've been on other shows talking about their encounters. That's great too. Just send them my way if you can. So, and we'll make the show better and put more content. Okay. So, but this is the video, or at least I'm going to show a picture of it so that people can go back and look at a link. They can go look it up if they want. Okay. I said, okay. All right. So this is where the video's from. So you can screenshot this. You can go look it up if you want to see the whole thing. It goes into other content too, but it has a fascinating little Dogman thing in the beginning. And I wanted to put it on here and show it to you guys. Now, you got to be careful with video today because AI is insane. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff with AI online right now, and you have to question everything you see. But I will say, this looks awfully good. I mean, I think, I'm no expert on this, but to me, I believe this footage is real. Could be wrong, but I believe this footage is real. Let's check it out.
Tonight I wanted to talk to you about missing people and some of the theories why people go missing in the woods. I am referring to, if some of you guys are probably familiar with, the Missing 411 books. It's also a documentary. And for people who aren't familiar, I'll give you a quick rundown. These are a series of books, East Coast, West Coast, in the cities, outside of America, about people who go missing. Now, I'm not talking about people who go missing in the woods who fall in a river, fall off a cliff, twist their ankle, get attacked by a bear, and they find evidence of it. We're talking about people who mysteriously vanish. Generally, these tend to be kids or people who are special needs, who do not have the ability to communicate or speak properly, or older folks sometimes. So what happens is these people go missing and are never found again, or if they're found, their bodies and their possessions and things with them are found in the same area that's been searched.
All right, he starts going into other things. I just wanted to show that Dogman footage. I saw some other footage recently that I was meaning to bring on here, but you know, you get busy and things slide by. That was very similar to this one. A guy was in their vehicle with a flashlight and inside the garage, and it was not as clear as this video, which is why I love this one so much. But you can make out a creature very large walking by the passenger side or the driver's side mirror, going to the front of the vehicle on like two legs, standing up, and it turns. And when it realizes that there's a person shining a flashlight literally in its face, it starts growling at it. Now, the footage isn't real clear, but you can make it out. And I'm not a big fan of like, oh, look at that circle spot here. You see what that is? And I'm just like, dude, I don't see what you're talking about. I get that all the time. People are like, look at this circle spot. You don't see that? And I'm like, I have no clue, man. I don't see it. Sometimes you can, but it's got to be pretty clear. This one, you can make it out pretty well, but you got to, it's not like super clear. I'll try and find that and bring it back. I need to tell everybody about my last show. My last show was censored. People have been asking me where it went. Episode 35. It was censored, and I got a strike on my channel. And if you want to see that episode, I dropped it on X. On my account there is at Harbinger REP, all one word. Harbinger REP, at Harbinger REP. So you can go check it out there. Also, there's another one I got censored for that was removed that I also dropped on there a while back, and that was the show I did with Skiba Nation, which is Rob Skiba's son, Jeremiah Skiba, where we talked about some stuff I can't talk about on here. So, and it was a great show. I had them on my channel and interviewed them, which was it was a really good show. And that was episode 7, I believe. So go check that out on X, at Harbinger REP. All right, one word. Okay, moving on. So the topic of tonight, of course, is the terrorist incident that took place, and that's what people are referring to now. People throw that term terrorism, you know, anytime something happens now, and it's very loosely thrown out there, and I'm not a fan of that at all, you know, especially if it involves any kind of conservatives. Now it's a terrorist event, like January 6th, which, you know, was a major setup, right? Not a terrorist event like the media and the government try to portray it as, all right? However, this actually does seem to be as though it was motivated by a terrorist event, and it's important because in the last 2 shows I've done, including the one that was removed, it was about talking about Operation Jericho and Operation Red Dawn, which are 2 globalist projects to try to stop Trump from getting into office by declaring states of emergency in the U.S. Operation Jericho, and I'll just do a little refresh since the show was removed. Operation Jericho, and there's a television series in 2006 with Skeet Ulrich right here. That was about, hey, what if a bomb goes off in the middle of a town, and what do you do? Great show. I recommend people go watch that. I think it has like 2 seasons. Didn't last a whole long time. The black guy in there is Morgan, that went on to do the Walking Dead series after this show, which we love him. He's awesome. Okay. And he was good in here too. Anyway, Operation Jericho is about nuclear style weapons that are set off in multiple cities in the U.S. to break down our government and to declare a national emergency and continuity of government. All right. All right. Continuity of government, written under the Obama administration and furthered under Biden, is they can suspend our government in the event of a declared emergency. They can create their own new government and then instantly put us all under martial law. And then they say after the dust settles, then we'll have new elections after that. So in other words, it's a way for them to stay in power. And the communist globalists that have taken over our government have no intention of giving up power to Trump. Zero. Or to the new administration. These are not people that care about the Constitution. These are not people that care about laws. These are not people that care about truth or justice. They only care about pushing their own agenda, which is lying, cheating, and stealing to take more power for themselves. Now, Operation Jericho, remember you had the CEO of the aerospace company that came out saying, he designs drones, and he was putting out a hypothesis that there was a report of nuclear material that was missing that they believed it was in the Northeast area. There were also reports, and he even had an eyewitness that put his hands on one of these nukes. And apparently the story was that we had sent these kind of portable suitcase-sized nukes, if you will, to the Ukraine, like 80 of them, 60 to 80 of them. But then a bunch of them went missing and came back to the U.S. And we know this because there's trackers on them. But then the trackers disappeared. Imagine that. Then you've got all these drones going on. Now, some of these drones are very high technology, or, there's a lot of suggestion of otherworldly stuff. We covered that in the last show. I just want to just touching on it, not going to really hit that, so we can move on with our content for tonight. And y'all can go check out that other show on X. The X-Files. Molnar. Anyway, so Operation Jericho is this plan that they set off these bombs, like in Washington, D.C., declare a continuity of government emergency, and then our government is literally suspended, recreated overnight. We're putting martial law, takeover, and then down the road they say, oh, now we'll have an election. We'll have another election, and I'm sure that will be real fair, right? Yeah, right. Oh, and just so happens that election will go 180 degrees in the opposite direction. Or, oh yeah, it was real close, but yeah, right. Yeah, I'm buying that. I got some bridges to sell you, right? Then the other part of that was Operation Red Dawn. All right. If y'all remember the old, by the way, Red Dawn was the first/second movie ever to be created with a PG-13 title. 2 movies came out the same weekend, and both of them had the PG-13 title for the first time. One was Gremlins, and the other was Red Dawn. So, and I watched them both in the theater when they came out that weekend and loved them both. Red Dawn, is about foreign forces attacking the United States in an all-out kind of blitzkrieg battle, shock and awe, if you will, on U.S. soil. All right, us being invaded, hence this, all these troops coming down here that are foreign troops in these parachutes. All right, now the real Red Dawn is a little different. The real Red Dawn is based on open borders. All right, open borders. So we know, and I'm going to be playing some clips from former CIA agents who are going to be explaining this from the Sean Ryan show. All right. Sarah Adams. Okay. She's amazing. She does a fantastic job. So, and I encourage you guys to go back and watch the full show. I'm just going to be playing a few clips of it. But anyway, that said, Red Dawn, we know that Al-Qaeda forces, Al-Qaeda forces, ISIS, and all these, whatever you want to call them for the flavor of the month, these terrorists from the Middle East, we've allowed in our open borders to come here, and they've come here with the intention of creating terrorist acts right here on our soil and in major ways. Okay, so this is very important. People need to be aware of this. All right, they need to be aware of this. So you've got Al-Qaeda and ISIS, you've got Middle East terrorists, but on top of that, I've been tracking a story for years now that I've been trying to warn the public about. We keep finding all of these military age men that have come across our border in the last few years that have UN military ID cards. UN military ID cards. And they claim they're here for an event. that's going to go bad for us. All right. So that's part 2. Part 3, I've also been tracking stories that near the Canadian border and in the Mexican border, you have Chinese soldiers. Chinese soldiers. I've heard reports of even 200 or plus that 200 to 400,000. All right. Chinese soldiers. All right. Stationed right there, ready to go, north and south. All right. That's bad. So you got Al Qaeda terrorists, Middle East terrorists, ISIS terrorists. All right. You've got UN military ID, military aged males saying that something's going to kick off and they're waiting for it. And then you've got the reports of Chinese soldiers in mass on the northern Canadian border and on our southern Mexican borders. Okay. So that does not make a pretty picture. That makes Operation Red Dawn. All right. Now, if you remember back during the Obama administration, there was a school shooting. And of course, all the Democrats came out saying, we got to take guns. We got to take guns. We got to take guns. You know, oh, we want to keep our children safe, right? It's okay to board them. Okay. It's okay to chemically alter them. But it's not okay to have a gun to defend yourself against crazy people and crazy times, which that's absurd. If times are that crazy and there are school shootings, the best way to avoid that is for more responsible people to be armed. And I'll quote a case. You know, there was a school shooting in the Northeast years ago with an Asian boy with 2 pistols that killed 22 students, all right, in a college in the Northeast. One thing you didn't hear about that is just a few years prior, there was another attempted school shooting, but guess what happened? The school shooter pulls out his weapon to try to hurt people, and 6 different students who were illegally carrying guns pulled out their guns and pointed it at the bad guy. Guess what? 0 people dead. 0. That's how you solve this. You don't solve it. Look, think about, you don't solve it by taking civilians' rights to defend themselves. See, that's what happens under communism. And under communism, you're not allowed to defend yourself, even from an attack. Right? Even from an attack. I heard a story yesterday about an old man who came home and found 2 people were breaking in his house. He shot them and they arrested him for murder. All right. No, not wrong. If someone's breaking in your house, hey, it's fair game. I don't care if they're running. I don't care if they're getting out the door. I don't what it is. You're gonna break into someone's home. You're all bets are off. You know. You need to defend that property. You need to defend your house and life. And here's the thing too. You can't make assumptions in that moment. You don't know what's going on. You don't know if there's multiple people there. You've got to defend yourself. All right. You've got to defend your life and your children, et cetera. Anyway. So, these are really important issues. Okay. So we've got all these soldiers now during that gun shooting. The reason I brought that up under Obama, and the Democrats start coming on saying, oh, we got to take people's guns. So abortion's okay. We can kill all our children. Well, but we can't let people defend themselves. All right. Which is absurd. But that said, what happened is China, I remember this as though it was yesterday, released a story they made a national headlines in the US saying, oh, Mr. Obama, if you want our help, we will help send troops to America to disarm your citizens. We will go door to door to disarm American citizens and help you and aid you in disarming the public. That happened. All right. The UN has made also similar statements in time that we can help send troops. So you think it's just a coincidence that we've got Chinese troops and we've got UN military troops all ready to go in some kind of situation? I will remind you that when Trump won the popular vote and the electoral college, all of a sudden even before that, but you had congressmen calling for civil war, saying, and even before saying, we're not going to accept him if he wins, that we will create civil war and have another election. And then you even had military personnel in the Pentagon saying they were meeting to discuss the situation. What are you meeting to discuss? That's called the party of treason, you know? So it's America's in a civil war. I don't know if you realize it or not, but America's in the middle of a civil war. All right. It's not a hot war yet, but it looks like they're trying to gear up for a hot war pretty soon. All right. Whether it's alien invasion or whether it's Operation Jericho, Operation Red Dawn, or the both of them. All right. The both of them. Okay. How many Chinese have been buying up land near military installations and facilities? Come on, man. Dr. Phil's even talking about that on his show. How's that not like, public news that's talked about more? Doesn't that seem like that's strange? Or like we shouldn't allow something like that? Or that could be like a security risk? Maybe it's just me. All right. Moving on, getting more to the topic. Sorry, I got a little bit of a cold. So if I sound a little funny, that's why. So moving on. All right. Laura Logan. CIA urging Taliban to activate sleeper cells in the U.S. for terror attacks to be blamed on ISIS. Okay. That's huge. First of all, Laura Logan, been following her for years. She's amazing. She's gorgeous. She was attacked and abused by Muslims when she was in the Middle East reporting on a story. They attacked her, and she was attacked by a huge crowd. And thank God she escaped with her life. But they ripped off her clothes. They did some unspeakable things to her. She tells her story publicly. Wouldn't wish that on anybody. But she's a strong person, and she's a strong woman, and she does a fantastic job in her reporting. All right. So she's always a good source to listen to. But she's sitting here warning us that the globalist, that's who that agency works for, not us. Just ask John F. Kennedy if you struggle with that one and see what he has to say. Oh, he can't because he's dead? When he said he was going to disband that agency because they didn't just serve the U.S. but had their own ulterior agenda? Gee, imagine that. They're still here running the show and rigging elections, not just in the U.S., but in Brazil, in Poland, in Mexico, all right? England, France, all right? Ukraine, like who do you think put the puppet Zelensky in, Zelensky. Canada, Trudeau, all globalists, and they're all pushing what? A neo form of communist Marxism, all right, which I wrap up under one thing called globalism. And when I say globalism, they're all pushing the agenda of creating a one world government. That's what globalism is about. It's a one world government, all right? But I claim that one world government is going to happen. It's going to come because of biblical prophecy, and it'll be run by the Antichrist, spoken of and warned in the Bible to come. And that's what I claim. And that's for another show because I'm working on that, the identity of the Antichrist. I've got a lot of good stuff on that, but the problem is it's going to take me a long time to do it justice. Anyway, so I wanted to start off by putting this thought out there as far as these sleeper cells, okay? And who's actually behind this? See, this is the most important thing I want to get across to people. If there are bombs that go off in our country, it was this agency that was behind it and created it and set it up, okay? If our president is killed, all right, it was this agency that was behind it, orchestrated it, and set it up, okay? If there are terrorist attacks that take place in our country, it's not just because of stupid policy. It was this agency that set it up, okay? That's the point I'm trying to get across here. If anything goes bad, if there's a civil war breakout, all right, it's because of this agency. I'm trying to get ahead of the story. See, what's happening now is the waters are being tested to see if they can roll the tide, roll tide. You know what I'm saying? We have to try to get ahead of this and get it in the public's mind that these events are being orchestrated. They're not just being orchestrated by terrorists. They're being orchestrated by a globalist government movement that is in fear and threat of having their power removed and having a Trump administration come in and clean house. Okay? That's what this is about. That's what this is about. So if we have a civil war, if we have bombs going off, if we have all of a sudden the resurgence of Antifa and all that craziness, all right, destroying cities, attacking people, causing hate and violence, that's not by accident. That's not by accident. These are being orchestrated. Those are pawns. See, hate is the easiest way to manipulate people. That's why it's so easy to manipulate the Middle East, because they're full of hate. They're full of hate. And when they're full of hate, they're blinded. They're blinded. And it's so easy to manipulate them as your little pawn. All right? Your little pawn. That's why in one of my last videos, two shows ago, I showed the chest with the chessboard with the mushroom cloud going off in the background, because that's what's playing out here. This is a global battle, and it's like the Game of Thrones. The TV show, The Game of Thrones. Hey, man, you go all in on the Game of Thrones or you die. You either win or you die. Once you go all in the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. All right? And that's what this is about. And that's why it's funny. You have these politicians that know they're as guilty as sin. I mean, as guilty as can be. And they're like, hey, man, I sure hope Trump doesn't abuse his power to try to go after his political opponents and try to put them in jail. Really? Really? What in the hell have y'all been doing to him for the last several years? Oh, so it's okay for them to do it, but it's not okay for justice on the other side. Really? Imagine that, right? But that's what they want you to believe, and they try to control the narrative by getting that out there. They always accuse you of what they're actually guilty of, all right? So anyway, moving on. I want it to be very clear. Anything happens, it's not by accident. It was orchestrated, and it was orchestrated. Trying to get my hands right here. It was orchestrated by this agency, which is evil. Now, it's not to say there's not good people there. It's not to say there's not good patriots there. But unfortunately, those in power that run it are nefarious, to say the least. And they are one-sided in their political views. They're not. That's another problem. Our justice system is, if you see Our Lady of Justice holding the scales, she has a blindfold over her eyes. Why? Because she is supposed to be impartial. Justice is supposed to be impartial, but that's not what we see today. We see more and more court systems used to target political opponents. More and more, we're seeing things, or censorship, to target what? Really? It's not disinformation. There's no real such thing as, you want to know disinformation, it's called mainstream media, because it's all government-run propaganda. That's all it is. That's disinformation. What they call disinformation today is they silence you from being able to speak the truth or to be able to question. Our entire history has been about you having a voice and you being able to question authority or question a policy or direction. It's only the new communism that says, oh no, if you speak against us, you're doing disinformation, and you're going to be canceled. You're going to be removed. You're going to be punished. That's not American, and it's not truth. There's no such thing really as disinformation. You have I can tell you, dude, I got an intelligence background. You know what you learn in intelligence? You want to remove your opinion from the process. You want to look at all the information you can on a given subject from multiple sources, including your enemy's perspective, all right? The other side's perspective. And then you collate all that data together to try to form reasonable theories and hypotheses that you present in intelligence briefings to your higher up. That's how it's done. And you look for patterns. You look for patterns. Always in investigation, just like in law enforcement. In law enforcement, in what movie was it? The Dark Knight Rising. It was the last Dark Knight. I love the scene where Robin, before he becomes Robin, is talking to the chief of police, right? And the chief of police recognizes this kid is, he's got some good quality to him. That shows some promise. So he makes him a detective, and he says something to like disparage himself, and right away he corrects him and he says, "Hey, you're a detective now. You're not allowed to believe in coincidence. You're not allowed to believe in coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence. And two, you have to go and search and look for patterns. Look for patterns. Look for patterns. Look for motive. Look for agenda. Who's got the motive? Who stands to win from this? Hey, if we have an alien invasion right now, who stands to win from this? If our government declares continuity of government and starts our government all over, who stands to win? Is it the new administration that's coming in? No. So who could be motivated to create that situation? I mean, really? Could it be this simple? How do people not see this? It really is that simple. Look at motivation. If terrorists, if we've got to open borders and allow military-age men to come in our country, that we make ourselves vulnerable, who stands to win from that? Does the American people win from that? No. Who stands to win? How about the current administration? How about the globalists who believe that they have to destroy America in order to create their utopian one world government? But that utopian one world government is a nightmare. And in their own words, all right, their own words, all right, and that's what the Great Reset's all about. That's what the Great Reset is about. It wasn't a pandemic. It's about changing our country, our government, and our world and forcing it into a one world government. All you got to do is go read their books from these people, Tragedy and Hope. Go read that book. You understand everything I'm trying to explain. Look how long ago it was written, and then see if it doesn't apply to everything that's taking place today, including the pushing of communism and Marxism on our young. And that's all like college institutions are today. It's indoctrination camps. I went to visit a friend of mine for Christmas, a medical doctor, and he was upset because his son has become like liberalized from his Catholic high school, And unfortunately, I wish I could say that he was the only person to say something like that, to me. But it's caused problems in their family because the views they've indoctrinated his child with, and that's dangerous. And when you see that, there used to be, I was telling somebody earlier, there was a guy who created a 15-hour DVD disc of research that he had done, where he was talking about how the Rockefellers, who worked for the Rothschilds, right, took over. First of all, they owned what do you call it? They owned all the coal mines. All right, they had a monopoly on coal. Well, that made them very wealthy in the U.S. because everyone back in the day needed coal for fuel, for power. All right, to warm your homes and stuff like that. But they realized, especially with the advent of electricity that they knew was coming, they realized they needed a new cash cow. So what they came up with as a solution, big pharma. All right. Right. See, it used to be amongst doctors that you always wanted to do the health of patients by, you know, uh, you know what? Because I got a strike already, I'm just going to avoid anything about speaking about medical establishments and doctors because of the fact that we're not free to speak on such subjects, even if it's the truth. All right. But I don't want to get another strike, so I'm just going to avoid that topic altogether and move on. The Rockefellers created Big Pharma. They created, they indirectly, then they went on to create, what was I trying to say there? They created that for the cash cow, but then they put out a paper saying that they were going to take over universities, and they wanted to turn universities away from, a lot of universities back then, especially, were like Catholic institutions and stuff like this. And they said they wanted to turn those universities away from, supporting the teachings of the church, and instead have them focus on pushing their own personal agendas, which was a neo form of Marxism and communism in one, right? And they do this as a system of control and to do away with, and here's another thing: they target the young. They don't want to spend time wasting with the older, more experienced people. They want to target young minds before they're really formed yet, when they can really make a difference on them, and they're patient. They wait a few generations until now they've got an indoctrinated society. And that's what we're facing today, Anyway, getting back to our story. So I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the news. Okay, I can't speak all of a sudden. The news headlines about breaking in New Orleans. Terror suspect was, I'm not even going to read that. Okay, so a terrorist struck New Orleans last night. Okay, and I'm going to come back to this because that's somewhat misleading. What was amazing about this is I was on the phone with a friend of mine last night, just, wishing each other a happy new year, right? And I have I got this app called Earth Cams, right? And I pulled up the Earth Cams to watch, like, the ball drop in New York and stuff like that. Then I went to New Orleans, which is one of the featured cameras. And right here, you see in the bottom left, it says Bourbon Street, right? It's the camera right here. I'm going to show you some footage of this very spot later. I was watching this last night till about 2:00 in the morning. And then I decided I got to start getting ready for bed, right? Staying up late for New Year's, which is kind of a lie there because I stay up late all the time anyway. Anyway, just a night owl. I wanted to show people. So I just happened to be watching this, and I took this screenshot to show my friend like how crowded the quarter was and all the hustle and bustle that was going on there last night. And that was about 2:00 in the morning, give or take, or just under. And then at 3:00 is when the attack took place. Okay. And I wanted to show this picture because I want to show everybody, look how many people are there. I mean, it's like shoulder to shoulder. It was packed. And I was watching this for a while, and it was just steady streams of large numbers of people. There's a bar right there across the street where they do karaoke, and there's another camera where you can watch them do the karaoke. It's fun. I told my friend that when I finally am able to move away from here, when I get homesick, I can pull up these cameras and watch New Orleans. And then I said, but that's as close to New Orleans as I want to get. And I was born there. Anyway, let's go into a little bit of the footage of, there's not a whole lot I was able to get, but I got some. So let's see if we can pull some of that footage up from last night. You saw that? There's not a whole lot to it. I just wanted to show how crowded it was, how many people were there. That last scene, you see all those police officers standing across the street, and all of a sudden it comes in on the radio, or they might have heard something audibly, and they just all take off. And so yeah, so what took place is, let me see, I had this queued up ready to go, but of course now I don't. What took place is this guy ran into this area, and I'll show, while I'm looking for that, I'll show a woman there explain what took place, and I'll just fill in details.
The subject has been identified as 42-year-old Samsud Dim Jabbar, a U.S.-born citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck, which appears to be rented, and we are working to confirm how the subject became in possession of this vehicle. An ISIS flag was located on the trailer hitch of the vehicle, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. We are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism. We're working to ensure that there is no further threat. We do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible.
We're now learning that investigators have reviewed video showing 3 men and a woman who may have been involved in placing suspected improvised explosive devices in the French Quarter, according to law enforcement sources that tell CNN. Investigators are also going through at this hour writings that they believe support investigators' view that this was inspired by ISIS, with a suspect who allegedly ran through those crowds of people with his pickup truck.
Weapons and potential improvised explosive devices, IEDs, were located in the subject's vehicle. As of now, 2 IEDs have been found and rendered safe. The FBI Special Agent bomb technicians, as well as our local law enforcement partners, have been working to determine if any of these devices are viable, and they will work to render those devices safe. We are aggressively running down every lead, including those of his known associates. That's why we need the public's help. We are asking if anybody has any interactions with Samsud Dim Jabbar.
Yeah, okay. So she pretty much described most of everything right there. And she did a fairly good job in her description as well, now that I hear it again. Because if you look at some of the earlier stories, I can't stand mainstream media. They're extremely manipulative, all right? And that's for a purpose, and it's to manipulate the public. Look at this article. Breaking: New Orleans terror suspect was a U.S.-born veteran flying ISIS flag at scene. Why do they have to sit here and parade the fact that he's a U.S.-born veteran? Okay, now that might actually be true, but what they're trying to cover up the fact is that the man is a Muslim. All right. And a Muslim working for ISIS, performing a terrorist attack against our country. But the mainstream media will not say Muslim, and they will not say terrorist. Well, now they might say terrorism, but they will not say, especially if you're white, they'll say terrorist in a heartbeat. I mean, you curse at someone, you're a terrorist if you're a white person. But my point is, they won't say Muslim. And they do this in Europe as well. The globalists do this. They won't say, because they don't want people to be aware of the Muslim threat we brought into our country. And Muslims are not a religion of peace. Read is the Quran. You offer the infidel Islam. If they refuse, you offer them your sword. That's not peace. Where did all the terrorists come from? They want to call Christians terrorists. But how many Christians have shot up schools or people? They don't. But on the other hand, we bring over all these people. One time Trump said, why do we only bring the trash into our country? That when you go to these war-torn places that have been fighting for centuries over a blade of grass, all right, or whether you wear a piece of clothing over your head or not, you bring that here. What do you think's going to happen here? These people do not assimilate into your culture. They're known for not assimilating. So they bring all that garbage, all that tension, all that stuff here. And that's part of what we're facing. Another article. At least 10 killed in New Orleans after driver intentionally rams into crowd on Bourbon Street. Okay. That's too small for me to read. But notice the ISIS, the reason I put this up is the ISIS flag is in the back of the truck right there. Okay. Here they laid it down to take pictures of it. That was posted on X. And then again, here's the guy they've identified as the driver. Now they claim that he's a American citizen and a veteran. So he served in our military to get citizenship. Okay. Other news articles say that keep saying he was born here. Well, we don't know that yet, but whether he was or not, the man is a Muslim terrorist. All right. That's the problem when you bring these Muslim terrorists into our country. This is what we're going to see. This is what's going to happen. And this is why we should not be bringing Muslims into our country. And that's not to say that all Muslims are bad. That's not true. I'm sure there are good Muslims, but if the problem is, it's the militant ones you have a problem with, and they come in and even turn the good ones militant because they say, "Hey, we're going to kill your whole family if you don't do what we say." Yeah, well, now they're all militant. Imagine that. And there's case precedent of how that's happened in country and location after location after they come in. Not to mention voting blocks. Boy, like England. Well, England. Look at what's going on in England and Ireland right now. All right. You start allowing the Muslims to get in your government and vote, and you're done. You're done. I mean, look at Omar that we have to deal with. And what a crazy person that is. You know, she married her brother to get him to come here. Crazy. Breaking, FBI now says New Orleans terrorist truck attacker smashed Din Jabbar did not act alone. Oh, I thought they were saying his last name because there was 3 syllables in the other, or 3 words. Anyway, they're saying now they don't believe he acted alone. And you heard in that report, they did find 3 other men and a woman connected with this incident in New Orleans. And they had planted a bomb. Someone I talked to this morning told me they planted a bomb near a cathedral in New Orleans. And the law enforcement, which our law enforcement are really highly trained and high speed here, and they don't mess around. Just ask the guy ran in the crowd. He's dead now. That's not going to last long with our guys, I promise you. But anyway, that said, law enforcement was able to disarm at least one bomb near a cathedral. All right. But from that report, even there were multiple IEDs, bombs, if you will, that apparently they were planning to set off more than likely in different locations. Okay. So, and some reports said this guy drove into the crowd, then got out and started shooting people with a pistol. Already the left are saying he had an AR in the car. The report I read, and we don't have all the information yet, so you got to be a little bit careful. The report I read said that he had a .308 rifle in the car. All right. Now there are some .308 AR platforms, but more than likely it sounded like that was more just like a deer rifle kind of thing. I don't know if you're dealing with terrorists. They often use AR style semi-automatic weapons, so it wouldn't be surprising. But now here's something that's a little funny. People are talking about, you see this circle right here? New Orleans during these times where people are crowded so much on these streets, they actually put up some blocks in the roads to stop vehicles from coming through. But locals are starting to point out very quickly that these barriers were removed. Who removed the barriers? Because I doubt it was the terrorists. Here's another story. Bourbon Street barriers were down, being replaced when the driver struck dozens in a mass attack. Why were the barriers down? The whole purpose of the barrier is to stop an event like this from happening. It's the whole purpose. So where were the barriers? All right. That's another ISIS flag that's very similar to the one that they were taking pictures of from the scene. So That's why I wanted to show that picture. Okay, moving on. Breaking, another big change just came in, the Sugar Bowl. They've postponed the Sugar Bowl because they want to make sure that they can beef up security and test that there's no more bombs or attacks while everyone is together in a small location. They don't want some bomb going off in the Super Bowl. So very wisely, they've decided to postpone it so that they can beef up their security and make sure everything is copacetic, which I think is a very smart move. Because yes, terrorists are going to target opportunity where the largest crowds are together so that they can get the biggest bang for their buck, so to speak, so they can cause the most fear and panic. All right. Trump comes out and says, act of pure evil. Trump rages over New Orleans terrorist attack, blames Biden and Democrats for open borders. Yes. 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 That's the key. That's the key. Why did we bring all this into our country? What do you expect is going to happen? All right. So he says when he gets in office, if he makes it into office, I'm praying, then he is going to deport a lot of these people who are illegal and do not rightfully belong here in our country. And here's another thing too. I mean, you got to understand, it's our country wants to be a melting pot of different cultures. That's awesome. That's part of what makes America great. But there are limits to that. We can only, our system can only support so many people at a time. Only, or you know what's going to happen? When I lived in Los Angeles, and when I was there, they said something like 5 hospitals were forced to close, were bankrupt because of illegal immigrants. They couldn't stay in business anymore. That means 5 hospitals for local citizens no longer exist for their protection and health because of illegal aliens. I mean, that's just one example, all right? But our system can only handle so much. If you bring in millions and millions, all of a sudden it's going to cause problems and chaos, and the economy is going to crash. I mean, there's no way around that. It's just common sense, you know? So he's right when he's blaming Biden and the Democrats and open borders. You want to get mad about something? Don't get mad about guns that save lives, all right, as well. Get mad about open borders and bringing in illegal, dangerous people here. Every day there's news articles about criminals that have illegally crossed our border and committed rapes, murders. I mean, just every day we're seeing this. Some of them deported several times and keep coming right back in. Oh, come back in. We'll give you another chance to kill somebody or rape someone's child. I mean, really? And where does the one thing globalists do not do is protect you. They do not protect the citizen. They don't care about citizens, you know, including your jobs. Another big thing this week. Do you know how many times I've had people tell me that they've been passed over for jobs at the corporations because they're trying to fill quotas for immigration and stuff like that? And you know what happens? You put someone in a position for a job based just on their race and color and immigration status, and not because of their experience or their qualification. And what happens? People get hurt because safety is not done right, because you've got people doing jobs that they're not the best qualified to do, or now they're in charge of you, telling you what to do when you don't have the time and grade and experience. I mean, when they don't have the time, grade, and experience over you that you do, and yet they're going to tell you to do things, wrong or whatever. And I mean, it's a recipe for disaster for our country. Jobs should not be about race. They shouldn't be about color. It should be about who is the most qualified person for the job, and often who has the most time and grade on a job, who has the most experience there, that they're applying for. Those are the people that should be doing it. We shouldn't just be in these, Elon, people got upset with Elon talking about bringing in all these immigrant workers. We've got fantastic workers here in the US, and there might be some specific job skills that would be better to bring in some immigrants for, but that process is so widely abused. It is so massively abused, that it's so massively abused that it's causing a problem in our country. And they said, I think I heard a statistic this week that 500,000 jobs were given to immigrants, and consequently citizens lost 500,000 jobs. And a lot of those were like, management kind of positions, it's not like low grade stuff. And they're talking about the impact that that's going to have. So, I mean, it's crazy. In these companies, there are many companies that have DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion quotas, quotas, banks for Hollywood, for video games and stuff. You can't get funding for your projects unless you sign contracts saying that you're going to make it woke and DEI, So I've got no problem with like mixed race families, but when you have every television show, every commercial, and every movie has to be forced mixed race families, or also has to be forced that only a woman can be in charge now. Every movie, if it's a president, it's a woman. Every movie, if it's a sheriff, it's a woman. Every doggone movie, everything. That's just wrong. And it's not to say that you can't have a good woman that would make a great president. There are women right now, I'd vote for president, in the right circumstances. Or even a sheriff. But that doesn't mean that every single thing you have to see has to depict that. And that's what we see now. And when you're showing that every single thing has to be a mixed race, you're also, these people, these globalists have said they're doing this to destroy Christianity, and they want to get rid of the white race. That makes it racist. That makes it evil. All right. So now if you organically have these characters and stuff like that, that's one thing. But if you do it just because you're forced to meet a quota, then that's part of the reason why we see so many things going down in Hollywood and entertainment. I mean, the last several years, movies are just trash more and more. And look at what they've done to Star Wars. Absolute trash. My favorite thing of all time, Star Wars. Absolute trash now. I won't watch anything else of Star Wars. I will give them a chance in The Mandalorian if they have Jon Favreau run it again, which they fired him. And then when they saw how disastrous things were, they brought him back. So we'll see how that goes. Now, so we had the shooting that took place in with the vehicle. Now, that's another important part. Democrats want to scream, take the guns, because a guy used guns to commit murder yesterday. So to save people, we got to take guns. Well, they also used a vehicle pickup truck as a weapon to kill a whole bunch of people. So that said, in 9/11, they used planes to kill a whole bunch of people. Does that mean we should ban all automobiles and airplanes because they can be used to destroy or hurt people? No, and neither with the gun. In fact, it was often said, a gun never killed a single person. There's always someone pulling a trigger. And if you want to say, well, accidents have happened, yeah, accidents do happen, but you have a responsibility to be careful when you're handling a firearm, especially when you're around children and other people. You need to be very careful. We had a state trooper one time was cleaning his gun at home. He dropped it. He tried to catch it and he shot himself. I don't know why he would be trying to clean it with a round in the chamber. I mean, the first thing you should do is make sure that thing's cleared, and then you rip it apart. Take the slide off, so that you're cleaning the parts, not the hole in that case. You know what I mean? Now you can snake stuff with those new snake things, and those are great, especially if you don't have time to stop and clean or anytime soon. Those are great, but again, you clear very carefully, and you always keep your finger off of the trigger guard. Please keep their fingers outside the trigger until it's the moment it's ready to shoot. You keep your finger outside that trigger, the trigger guard. Keep it on the outside. I don't worry about a safety on a gun. This is my safety right here. And it has never failed. Not one time. Not once. Now, knock on wood. I've seen accidents happen. I was with a buddy of mine one time, and we were in a police training thing, and we were just finished shooting on the range. And I go to talk to him in his pickup truck. He grabs his pistol off of the passenger seat, and he accidentally depresses the trigger. Round goes off and hits the floor. Thank God no one was hurt. But you have a huge responsibility to be careful. But, there's a lot of things that are dangerous. You can just as easily get killed driving a vehicle if you're not paying attention. I worked 450 crashes a year for a couple of years. All right. I've worked a lot of fatalities. They happen like this, just like that. Quoting Eddie Murphy in The Golden Child, just like that. Anyway, moving on. So if they want to start screaming about guns, scream about cars, scream about airplanes. The communist globalist left only want to take away your right to defend yourself. And if we have crazy people, there's never been a greater time why you need to carry guns. But along with that, you have to have safety and training. Okay. I advocate for every responsible person to carry a gun, but of legal age, of course. But that said, I also advocate you have to have training with that. And right now, they've changed the law in Louisiana where it's kind of an open carry state where people can carry concealed here. The problem is they still need training, and I highly recommend people go through the CCL courses. All right. And by the way, legally, it gives you you ever use a gun in a shooting, you're probably going to jail, whether you were right or wrong. And that's wrong. All right. That's just wrong. But that's what we live in today. So you keep that in mind. All right. Now, in the military, we had the saying, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, which means I'd rather face a courtroom than pallbearers carrying my coffin. Right. So there's a lot of wisdom to that too. If I see a situation going down, I'm worried about the loss of other life. I'm not even worried about me. I'm worried about other people, other families, other children. And I'm going to give my life without thinking twice to try to save them in an event. Okay. And that's why I always carry it on me. All right. I'm not going to pull out anything because I don't want to, I'm coming off a strike and I want to try and keep it cool. It's copacetic and don't want to give them any reasons for, jacking my stuff anymore. All right, moving on. So we had the terrorist event that took place in New Orleans. Well, then this took place. All right. Trump Tower explosion. Horror. Tick smoke rises in Las Vegas after loud boom. All right. One dead after Cybertruck explodes outside of the Trump Hotel in Vegas. The initial reports were saying the hotel blew up, but it turned out it was actually a vehicle outside that blew up, and it was a cyber vehicle, like one of these, I don't know, it's not self-driving. It had a driver, but like some kind of like Tesla type vehicle kind of thing. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that's exactly what the vehicle was, but before I move on to that story, there's one other thing I wanted to tell y'all. I talked to some of my trooper buddies today in regard to the accident that took place last night. All right. Or the terrorist event, rather. Let me correct myself. That took place last night. There's some tension that's going on between the state police and the FBI. Now, if you know anything about the history of the FBI involvement with these things, there's a lot of corruption that goes on in that agency. I don't trust them. It's not to say there's not good people. In fact, I met with an FBI agent recently. He was a good man. He's from the Baton Rouge Police Department right here. All right. And went on to join the FBI. He was a good man. I enjoyed meeting with him and talking with him. He helped me out with a friend of mine who needed help with something. So that was at our local office here. And I'm very thankful for that. So they're not all bad. But the problem is the leadership in that organization right now is bad. It's bad. All right, it's bad. Just like, and also the other intelligence agencies, and the other one that I don't like to say, but I kept throwing up, this agency right here. All right, bad, evil, satanic evil. Don't care about human life, only their agenda, evil. All right, which is really the one world government. It's not anything about the U.S. They're traitors. All right. Not to say you don't have good people and patriots in these organizations. You do, but they tend to be on the lower levels where you got the crazy people that are in control at the top, and they're able to cover up stuff like, Clinton servers, like Anthony Weiner's laptop. All right. I won't even get into Joe Biden's son laptop. Right. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. You get where I'm going. Usually in these investigations, the FBI would come in and take over the investigation. Well, from what I'm hearing from some of the troopers, and this is not, I doubt this is going to come out publicly, and I haven't been able to verify this either. So I'm going to put this out as kind of a supposed thing, but I did hear from some that there's some tension that's possibly going on. I'm going to say it that way, where we have some reason to believe that the FBI might have been involved in this. I hope to God that turns out not to be true. I really, really do. But it wouldn't surprise me in the very least if they were involved. And I hate to say that. It breaks my heart to say that. It breaks my heart. But that said, if you look at other cases, look at the Whitmer case where the governor was being kidnapped by the FBI. They were complicit in that. I know people that they've harassed. I had a friend of mine that was a friend of mine in Los Angeles. His father was a local news anchor and was very well known. And he just retired from being a news anchor. And he decided to go on a cruise with his wife. He goes on the cruise. Two young kids come in while he's like in a jacuzzi tub or something of that sort on the boat. And they threaten, they try to extort him. They say, listen, we want you to give us like $500. And if you don't, we're going to go say you touched us. And the guy's like, you can go, pound sand. I'm not giving you jack. So what the kids do? They went and complained and said this man tried to touch them. Caused a big incident on the boat. As soon as they get off the boat, they were met with the FBI. FBI does a case, it runs in the local news. This man's whole life is tarnished in an instant. When the FBI found out that they didn't have much of a case, instead of dropping the case or exonerating the man, they just decided, hey, we're going to add more pressure and try to get him to take a plea deal even. And the man's like, look, I'm not taking a plea deal. Even if it means I can go to prison, I'm not taking a plea deal and say I did something I didn't. It's not the truth. It wasn't right. He risked it. He went to court and he won. He won in court. He won. But they did a little retraction in the news, but that man's name was forever smeared. And unfortunately, my friend, his son, got cancer and died, even though he was a young man shortly after that. So it was a very tragic situation all around. That's not the only story I've heard like that with that agency. All right. I had a friend of mine one time who he bought a house in the Northeast, and it happened to be from a gangster. And he didn't know. This is like a mob type, connected guy, gangster. And the guy didn't know. He was just trying to buy a house. But that got the feds on him in an investigation. And man, they turned up the heat so bad that this guy said that he and his wife were planning to commit suicide because of the pressure that agency was putting on them in the investigation, even though this man was completely innocent. And not only that, one of the sweetest old men I've ever met in my life. He told me at some point, he said they even threatened him. Now, this is his words, but I believe him. He said they went as far as to threaten that they were going to rape his wife if he didn't take a plea deal. That's what he told me. That's what he told me. And I believe him. I do. There was a time it would be hard for me to believe that, but in the light of things today, I believe him. I believe he was telling the truth. And he was an innocent. By the way, he had a beautiful story. He and his wife were planning to commit suicide because of the pressure of that agency, but God stepped in and intervened and changed everything. And he gave his life to God, and everything got better. They sent him to prison, federal prison, for 2 years, even though he was 100% innocent. 100% innocent. But God was able to save both their lives, and he was able to help a lot of people through that. So it turned out to be a beautiful story in the end. You know, evil's evil, but God sure has a way of taking crooked lines and making them straight. God has a way of taking evil that's done to us and makes us better people. You know, I had a really hard childhood with my stepfather, but that also helped to mold and shape me as a result of that. Even though it was a lot of wrong that was done to me that I was innocent of, it still helped to make me a better person. So God is just a beautiful way of doing that. But anyway, getting back to the Trump Tower. So a bomb goes off in a vehicle explodes on the outside. All right. And I'm going to cut to just a little story on that. But that's also another terrorist attack that took place.
Now, 3 senior U.S. law enforcement officials say that this explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck, kind of in the portico there where you saw that smoke rising from in front of Trump's property in Las Vegas, is being investigated, at least initially, as a potential act of terrorism, and that it was, quote, intentional. And there was a person who was found deceased. That is the driver of that vehicle. There were 7 others that were injured as a result. And so they don't yet have a specific motive, but some things they've found in the investigation leads them to believe that this could have been some sort of a terrorist attack, or at least that they should investigate it as such. Interestingly, Chris, I know everybody's going to immediately say, okay, we have something that happens in New Orleans, we have something that happens in Las Vegas. The car that was used in Las Vegas, the Cybertruck, was actually rented from the same type of company. It's kind of like an Airbnb for cars as the car that was rented and used in New Orleans. So the driver of the vehicle, who's now deceased at the Trump International there in Las Vegas, used the same car company. But we are told from multiple senior law enforcement.
He's like, oh, we are told from multiple senior sources that these events are not connected. Yeah, right. What was I just talking about as far as like patterns, right? It's not a coincidence that both vehicles were purchased from the same place. I mean, come on. I mean, how stupid do they think we are? You know? Unfortunately, it's pretty stupid. So otherwise, they wouldn't be able to get away with this kind of stuff. Okay. Moving on to my last point I want to make, and that is refreshing the first point that I made. If this is it, I think this is it. Okay. Laura Logan warns that this agency that is evil and satanic is urging the Taliban to activate sleeper cells in the U.S. for terror attacks to be blamed on ISIS. All right. Again, this is to create destabilization. This is they're trying to test the waters to see if they can get away with a big event to stop Trump from coming into office. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm praying very hard every day against that and for Trump's safety. And I pray that and ask that you all do the same thing. Okay. But it is a very real threat and a very real possibility. All right. Recently, Sean Ryan just did a show with Sarah Adams. Sarah Adams is a former CIA worker who's an expert on some of these topics. And I wanted to play some clips showing what she has to say about this stuff, because it's eye-opening. All right. So please pay attention.
How certain are you that we'll see something in 2025?
I'm certain we'll either have embassy attacks in 2025 or the Homeland attack, or both.
All right.
So right there, very quickly, I knew that was going to stay on. I was hoping to take that one off. Right there, just a very short clip on that one. The others are longer, but that one I just wanted to throw out there. She says, hey, my intelligence says that the chances of the United States getting attacked on its own soil is extremely high for 2025. And look, we've already had one attack that took place, actually 2 attacks that have taken place just since ringing in the new year. So buckle up, Buttercup. because things are about to get shaky.
We have not had a man walk up to a building with a suicide vest on in the United States. Americans don't understand this. Al-Qaeda knows this, right? So this is new and innovative, especially now. You don't have to walk upside of the building. You can walk in the building because of the advancement of the vest. The other thing is, in the United States, we haven't had Fidean attackers. So the concept is the terrorist fights to the death. So he's not exactly a suicide bomber, but he will fight till either all of us are dead or all of his people are dead. We think it's going to be a swarming attack, right? Multiple different attacks at one time across multiple cities. We think there will be suicide bombers just because some of the attackers went through suicide bomber training and they have these vests. And then we think there's these Fidean attackers who will carry on until they're killed.
You just rephrase that. So these guys are trained and they are going to fight until they're killed.
Yes, and that matters, right? So I was watching this video and it was a suicide bombing in Kabul years ago. The bomber blew up and then everyone starts moving in. The first responders move in, right? And then another guy walks in and blows up. We know this is a tactic. But if Americans don't understand this as a tactic and don't understand these attackers are going to fight to the death, think about that. Battle's going on. The attacker surrenders. He might have the suicide vest. You know, we let our guard down. That man came to die, right? He's going to fight till he dies or you dies. So we can't let our guards down, and they know our weakness. So we have to be very careful that we don't have more people die in these second and third order effects of not knowing their intent.
What would happen if you had an October 7 style attack in Houston, Akron, Youngstown, Dallas, Miami?
We had a little brief discussion about suicide, the invisible bomb vests downstairs. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of one of those things that keep you up at night, right? You know, when we're talking about the threats to the homeland. So we first talked about what they call the invisible bomb in the newsletter, and basically it was highlighted in December, just this last December, and it was Al-Qaeda's in the Arab Peninsula, so their branch in Yemen, right? And they basically were showing off. It's really interesting. The video got taken down right away, and then I think most people in the U.S. didn't even see it, so like TSA completely ignored putting out the actual piece of the video that mattered. And so the big piece of the video was teaching terrorists how to make a bomb that goes through a magnetometer. So, you know, like most airports in the world, you don't have that weird hand scan thing. You just go through a random metal detector. So this bomb basically goes through the metal detector, okay? So they were showing it off then. Well, now Al-Qaeda's advanced and it's in a suicide vest. But the interesting part is it doesn't just go supposedly through the metal detector. They made it with components dogs aren't trained on to sniff. Al-Qaeda found the Building 7 conspiracy stuff fascinating. And they have actually had discussions about how we could do ruses and bring in the Building 7 people to make them blame their government more. So they're actually even looking at our conspiracies and targeting those people for the homeland attack.
What I keep going back to is whether it's ISIS-K, whether it's the Al-Qaeda, the thing that we know is they love to outdo the last attack. They're not going to be casual about the next one. They're going to make it a point to make it bigger and more spectacular and more paralyzing than the last one. And what I've heard Sarah and others say is that all indications are that they have trained heavily in close quarters battle, local distributed attacks, and that there's a very good chance that the next thing we see on the homeland could be an October 7 style house-to-house, restaurant-to-restaurant, synagogue-to-chapel kind of attack on a massive scale.
Do you think we will have to go back to Afghanistan to fight the Taliban?
Everything that we're seeing from multiple very credible sources is saying that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I'm sure you and I'll talk more about this, but they are in such advanced stages that those operatives are already here. What you can bet on is that they are going to outdo the last attack, and they are going to do it at such a level of emotional impact that we will have no choice but to respond, because it's going to take us into a sympathetic state.
I just want to clarify. You are 100% certain that there are 1,000 plus Al-Qaeda trained fighters within the United States borders.
Al-Qaeda says they trained and deployed 1,000 for this attack. First off, I think there's more than 1,000 Al-Qaeda members in the United States. But for the homeland attack, that number is based on what Al-Qaeda is saying, so they could exaggerate it. However, they did have about 1,400 in the Hamas attack, so the number is not off from what they did in the first round of attacks.
Is there any indication of what kind of attacks these are going to be? Actually, before we get into that, how old is this information?
I mean, it's ongoing. So the training's already done, right? So all the training info is now old because they trained all the Homeland attackers, if that makes sense. So like next week, you're not going to get info of a Homeland attacker probably at a terrorist camp because it's already done.
We live here. We live in this arena, in this, in this represented realm, this digital realm. We don't live in the natural world.
The federal government is not functioning. It's not. They're not taking this seriously. I don't think they're really taking any of the threats against the U.S. seriously, but it does sound like some of the states are taking it seriously.
So for Abbey Gate, that guy is Abdullah Omar Bajawari, and right now he's the head of intel for IS KP. So that's another target, right, that they should be going after for Abbey Gate, because he's kind of the plotter and planner, and we don't even hear his name brought up, right? So if we're talking about justice for Abbey Gate, like, and no one's even talking about, right, the key people we need to be taking out, I don't even know if there's active efforts.
Whatever the next big attack is against America, I don't know when it is coming, but I'll tell you this, it's going to make 9/11 look like a dress rehearsal. It's going to make 9/11 look like a walk in the park.
The Al-Qaeda that is coming is so much bigger than the Al-Qaeda on 9/11. Like, they're already probably bigger than 9/11.
That's scary.
Yes, Hamza al-Darnawi. So very close friend of bin Laden, super involved in external planning, obviously was involved in the Benghazi attacks. Where do you think he is now?
Afghanistan.
Yes. And it's like, hey, it's just another big Al-Qaeda guy who's Libyan in Afghanistan. Why the hell is he there? He's there training terrorists to come attack the United States. According to an op-ed in the Washington Post today, the CIA shares intelligence with the Taliban, so we have an official intelligence sharing relationship with the Taliban.
Do you know approximately how many terrorists we've caught trying to cross the southern border? I wouldn't imagine it's very many. It seems like the southern border is pretty wide open.
I don't know, because like last year I thought there was like 20 in a month or something. I feel like maybe in this year it was like 100 or so. I don't know the exact number. I know we're missing a lot.
Yeah, I mean, these are only who we've caught, and I mean...
and who we have biometrics for.
So that's pretty scary. But it's the fact of what we're dealing with. And it's not that our government doesn't care or doesn't know. It's because our government, the globalist leaders that are in power right now, have orchestrated this. Again, I refer back to the UN's replacement migration page that I call the weaponized replacement migration, which you see going on against the entire West right now. This is the Great Reset. The Great Reset is to create their one world government. But it'll be an authoritarian one world government where you have to take the mark of the beast, all right, in order to buy and sell. It's a nightmare. It's slavery. And if you listen to the mystics, that God has shown what it's going to be like to take that mark. There was one that spoke recently that said someone tried to fake that they had the mark, and they went to a checkpoint line to enter like some city, and they immediately knew the person was faking. And the result was they cut their head off right there on the scene as a result of that. The scary part wasn't the person that got their head cut off from the person telling this story of this vision they claimed they had. They said the scary part was no one cared. Everyone else, people that took the mark of the beast were just like the emotion's gone. The mark of the beast is going to connect you to a hive mind run by AI. That means you are no longer yourself. You become part of a hive mind. A hive mind. And everything you do and say is regulated. Everything. And everything you do and say is critiqued and criticized. You're given rules of what you can and can't do, all by the AI that watches everything you do in real time. It's a nightmare. It's slavery. It's the opposite of any freedom or self-will. And not only that, but it also affects part of your brain of your empathy where you just don't care anymore. That's why, they're like, oh, you're going to eat the bugs and you're going to be happy. You're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy, because it placates part of your brain where you're just like, you just don't care anymore. It's a very dark future for humanity that they're talking about trying to push and force on the rest of us. But I wanted it to be very clear. These terrorists are not here by accident. They're not here because of the negligence of our government. They're here because this is orchestrated for a very long time. I ran into a Green Beret that retired, that was hiding out in the woods, literally. He built a house out in the middle of nowhere, all right? He was a former Green Beret sniper, and I got to talking with him, and he said the reason why he was literally like hiding out in the woods was because he saw documents about all this stuff was coming years ago. And he was, as a special forces soldier, he was made privy to these plans that were going to take place. I tell you this, I ran into a family friend who had family that was high ranking in the military. And I asked them about some of this stuff. And I said, I've been hearing these sources. I said, can you confirm or deny? And they're like, it's real and it scares me to death. He said, it scares me and my wife to death, is what he said. And that was chilling words that this high ranking military army officer said to me. All right. There's more stuff I could say that I can't really say on here, because I'm not going to betray confidence of what people have shared with me, but I can tell you it's bad. All right. But the solution to everything always, as I say, is Jesus. All right. We just had Christmas where we celebrated the birth of our Lord. Jesus doesn't care what day it is, as long as you celebrate his birth with love and joy. All right. And that we strive to be better people and to be more loving to him and to each other. All right. And to our neighbors. All right. So that doesn't mean you have to be loving to people who are just trying to kill you. You got to be forgiven, but it doesn't mean we don't fight. And too much today, people have this pacifist notion of what Christians are. Christians are not called to be pacifists. We're called to be peacemakers. All right. But if your enemy comes to you with peace, then you sue for peace. If your enemy comes to you because they're trying to kill you, there's no peace. You kill them. And that's where we're at right now. We're under siege, literally. All right. But pray, because the Lord can stop this. The Lord ultimately controls what happens. And for anyone who thinks, oh, the Lord would never allow something bad to happen, read your Bible. It's what it's full of. It's full of people that turn their backs against God, and God turned their back on their people and their country. All right. It's over and over and over and over. I mean, you can't have a bigger theme in the Bible than that. I mean, hello. Yes, God will allow evil to happen in your country to be destroyed. Yes. People have a normalcy bias where you think that just because things have always been good, it always will stay that way. No. People think that just because we've never been attacked on our soil fully, that it won't happen. They didn't bring all these military age men here for nothing. They didn't bring all these troops here for nothing. All right. They've been planning for this event. These people that have stolen power, that steal elections, have no intention of laying their power down for another administration. They don't care about laws, rules, or the Constitution. They only care about power and their agenda. And they will lie, cheat, steal, and murder to accomplish that. That's what we're facing. That's what we're dealing with. So pray to the Lord, draw close to the Lord and your family. Protect yourselves, be careful, avoid going in public if you can, especially to major events right now. I would highly suggest beans, bullets, and Band-Aids. Try to get some storable foods, try to get some ammo. And if you don't have a gun, you're you know what you're called? A victim. You're a victim waiting to happen. All right. and medical supplies. All right. Even medical supplies for nuclear fallout. Now, that's something else that we need to consider. Maybe get a Geiger counter. We're heading into very strange and dark times. But ultimately, the most important thing is your relationship with God. It doesn't matter if I'm killed here tomorrow. And by the way, I'll throw it out there. I will never commit suicide. So if I'm ever suicided, I was murdered, and you know that. Now and forever. It's not in my religion. I will not commit suicide. So just throwing that out there. But that said, it doesn't matter if I die today, tomorrow. It only matters of where do you go when you die, because eternity is forever. This world, this life is the blink of an eye. It's a fleeting moment. That's all it is. So it determines where we go. This life, God gives. Jesus will not force himself on you. Will not, right? Will not. The devil will. The devil's all about force. All right. God will not force himself on you. So give your heart to God. If you don't know God, in earnest, ask God to reveal himself to you. And I promise you, he will. I promise you, he will. In fact, there's many, many Muslims now that are talking about having like visions and dreams about Jesus, and they're converting. I mean, there's lots. You can do a search for that online. There's lots of that going on. But anyway, I'm going to get going. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. Please pray for peace. Pray for peace and pray to love God and people more. All right. And I got in a big argument with a woman this week. Don't make things about race. We're all children of the same God. All right. So make things about what all people need to do to be better together and to love each other more. All right. Take care, everybody. God bless all of y'all. Please keep me in your prayers. You can reach me at HarbingerReport@yahoo.com. Also, for shows that have been removed, you can look at that or other content of mine on X at HarbingerRep. That's at HarbingerRep, all one word. I tried to do a report. It only gave me so much. So that's how much I did. But anyway, y'all have a good night. Please keep me in your prayers, and God bless you, and keep the lights on. Bye, everybody. See y'all next time.